Thank you so much for joining Sharebirds, the Essential Go-to-Market Show, tips and strategies, where we offer short video content and interview-style conversations with global product marketing leaders. I'm your host, Yasmin Turahi. Now, whether you're an early stage startup or a public company, almost everyone struggles with the same question. What does it take to have a successful product launch? Today, I'll be talking to Evelyn Watts. She's the Director of Product Marketing of RVezy, a peer-to-peer RV rental marketplace, connecting travelers with a safe and secure way to rent private RVs from trusted owners. And Evelyn also leads not just product marketing, but also lifecycle marketing at RVezy. So I'm super excited to talk to her today about all of her strategies on go-to-market. So welcome to the show, Evelyn.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
So to kick it off, can you tell us what are some of your top takeaways when it comes to the go-to-market process?
I think the very first one is when we talk about launch, it comes with preconceived notions. No two launches are the same. There is no cookie cutter. And I think getting rid of that bias, that baggage right away of what you think it is, kind of unlocks different ways to rethink how you can bring products to market.
Yeah, definitely. And what about some of the things that you've learned about team structure that might be helpful to a launch?
I think, well, there's a couple things. It takes a village. I know everyone says it, but it does take a village to make these things happen. And I think when you bring together the right team, representation across the different parts of the business is essential. And also making sure people feel, if they're part of that team, they feel not only accountable for it, but trusted for their decisions. So I think of the PMM as being the context setter, right? So making sure that everyone has the information to make well-informed decisions that align with the goals that we're all trying to achieve.
When you talk about trust, how do you kind of build trust as a product marketer? Because I think that that is such an important point and one that I keep hearing over and over again from a lot of people in the business who have said, I have this great strategy. I have been trying to implement it, but for whatever reason, I haven't been able to gain the trust of my employees, especially when it comes to product or other parts of marketing and sales and leadership teams. So how do you create that level of trust?
There's been a couple things that I found have worked for me. One is especially when you're new in an organization, going to understand to different groups and trying to understand their pains. So it's not just like, what is your job? What do you do? It's understanding what they struggle with, because I find those friction points are things that you can then use as levers, right? To get people on board. Because if we fix this, it's going to help you. So we're not just doing things for our end customer, we're also doing things that help our business. So uncovering friction, because then you become a problem solver for someone else, which means they're interested in what you're trying to do, which is why I call it find your super friends. So, there's other people in the business who see opportunities, and I find getting those, it's influencing without authority. It's also finding those other influencers within a business who understand and can help give you context. So it's like finding where's the value exchange? I'm going to help you, you're going to help me, we're going to help our customers.
Yeah, that's often what I do as well. And sometimes it just takes longer, in some cases than others. So it's just interesting. It's always a different scenario, based on which company I'm in and what company stage and growth they're in as well. And I know, Evelyn, you also have worked at a lot of different companies. So I'm curious, have you seen a shift based on the maybe growth stage or size of the company? Like, is it easier in some cases than others? And you worked at Shopify, correct?
I did, yeah, just as we were bringing in product marketing as a discipline. So super interesting. I started my career in a well-established consumer product. We had a year or 2 years to make a product. It had to be on the shelf. It had to be in 16 languages. Everyone kind of knew what they needed to do to get it done. So I feel lucky in that I didn't know how much I knew until I left. And then you go into companies that have gone really big, and with product marketing, it's like someone's doing it. They may not call it that, but there's someone's trying to make this work. So it's really interesting to be at a company that's gotten really big, really successful, who's trying to now introduce something later and figuring out how that works in their environment. So yeah, it's cool. That's where I found the Super Friends thing worked, because it is happening, and everyone wants to try and make it. You don't want to say the word process, but how can we make it work here? Like unpicking that knot.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think when you worked at many places, it actually becomes easier because there's some kind of like model and framework to implement.
Yeah, it's much easier to edit a page than start from scratch.
Yeah, definitely. So Evelyn, what about your go-to-market checklist? Can you tell us, what's on your checklist? What's some of the things that are most important for folks who are maybe building their own checklist or who have already launched a product in market and might need to go back? What do you think?
I think and I fall into this trap all the time. I think often we treat it like a checklist, and it's like a shopping list. And you're just like, what are the ingredients I need? What am I going to go buy? Versus stopping and saying, what am I trying to make? What is the recipe? Who's going to be at the table? what time does it have to be served? So I think it's like, if you think of all of the things that you have to get done, you're almost, I don't want to say you're like a restaurant, but you're putting together not just a meal, but an experience. So stop, look back, make sure the whole team is aligned and everyone sees the same picture of what's being served at the end of this day. Because then it makes it a lot easier to say, do we need this or do we not need this? Because you don't need everything on the list. So I think that's number one. And then number two, so it's funny, this is the bookends. The beginning is so important and the end is so important, is making sure that, okay, I'm going to keep with the restaurant analogy for a second, but the front of house, like what gets served, doesn't get served unless everyone in the back says it's ready. So that idea of product ready does not mean it's customer ready. The business might not be ready. You don't want your customer support team to be the first one going, oh, I didn't know we released that feature.
That is so funny. Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time where, at least in companies that don't have like a proper go-to-market process or don't have a product marketing team, there's always this idea that, oh, if engineering, it's GA, we call it generally available ready, that means that the product is ready commercially. And that's just almost always not the case. There's all these things that need to get done. And it's also not just a marketing centric exercise. There's a lot of other operational pieces that I think a lot of companies get stuck on. So yeah, I love that analogy, the menu. And I think it's so funny because we could take this down a lot of different paths, right? Like the menus that always have way too many food items on it. And you're like, I don't think that any
no substitutions.
So, totally. It's just, yeah, it's such a great analogy. Well, wonderful. And any last comments, Evelyn, like maybe something that surprised you the most in this journey as a product marketer?
I think, and I still do this, thinking that you have to do it yourself, that you're the only person responsible, a success and failure, it's all on your shoulders, and not building towards your weaknesses or finding the team that covers all your deltas, because there is no way one human can do all of it. And so being okay with not being the only person responsible and building the right team that feels trusted and that everyone is kind of contributing and learning from each other, because that is what makes even your next launch more successful and the next one more successful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, and I'm sure a lot of people have this difficulty when there's so much added to the go-to-market process and it becomes this like prioritization exercise like all the time. You're like, I can only focus on this. So I can't do just everything that's been asked. And I think maybe, and this question, tell me if you want to answer it because you don't have to, but because I think it's a very tough one, which is like, how do you decide if everything, let's say 50 items on a list are important for the success of a product launch, but you only have resources to get 10 of those things done. What do you do? Do you talk to the leadership team about hiring? Do you prioritize even more? Like what's sort of the process for that? Because I think that comes up a lot.
Yeah, it does. And there's a couple of ways. It can be one, these things absolutely have to get done. So either you delay the launch because that's the right thing to do, or you break it down. And so a launch does not have to be a one-time event. I've worked with a couple of teams where we took an existing product and there was no new feature development for a year because they had to do infrastructure work. Totally, that has to happen. So instead of trying to launch things or get all the things done, it was how can we tell the story in pieces so that as you're building towards things, we're just adding more value and adding more proof and adding, so it creates this like momentum of a launch rather than a one-time big bang. So that's one way to take a look at it. It's not, oh, we're not going to build these 5 features. It's like, what is the minimum valuable thing we can do? And is the story going to be true at the end? And so you start making a drumbeat. So it doesn't have to be eat the entire elephant all at once. Maybe it's just one bite at a time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love that momentum push. Oh, wonderful, Evelyn. Well, I know that these are very short conversations. I could probably talk to you for hours about the go-to-market process, product marketing, and so much more. But thank you so much for your time. And where can people find you?
Oh, absolutely. LinkedIn is the place. So Evelyn Watts on LinkedIn. But please, if you do connect with me, let me know that you found this podcast, because this is what's such a valuable way. I've connected with a whole bunch of people just through Sharebirds alone. So it's been really great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And for our audience, stay tuned for upcoming shows with product marketing leaders from startups to public companies as they share some of their best tips and strategies on the go-to-market process. And send us a note. Tell us what you learned. Tag me, tag Evelyn, tag Sharebird. We really appreciate it. And for those of you who are looking for more material on the go-to-market process, you can also check out my book, Product Marketing Debunked, which is on Amazon. I've also written plenty of articles on Medium, so you can find any of those on Medium by searching my name. And yeah, I would love to hear from you and stay tuned for more shows.